Here we are, first episode in June. Wes Peary, legend, Tornado Man.
I'm just picking up where you left off. Evan, there are two things. There's one thing I noticed differently the way we do our coverage, and that is I wear the full-on suit, and you go with just the shirt and tie.
You know, it was comfy at the time. It was more breathable, and occasionally I got the jacket. I got it right here. It's always an option. So, but yeah, I prefer the no jacket look. It's a little more relaxed. But man, for those of you who haven't been following weather, there was probably the most active weather recently was in the middle of the country, from Oklahoma up to Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas, and this guy was on top of it. One man crew. The coverage was great. I watched an hour and a half of it. I didn't watch all of it. I was listening, but for folks at home, it's not easy to do. First off, by yourself, and second, to be able to talk to every single one, not just the people downtown, but the farmers, people in the rural areas. It was very well done. I'll say that just because you're the co-host here. It was great. It was great to listen. And you know what I popped in my head too is when you said there's no hail with this. It reminded me of our conversation last week when you talked about identifying certain structures of storms when there's no hail, situations like that. So that popped in my head too. So it was awesome. Well done.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it. Yeah, the hail was very, very small. By the way, for some reason we've forgotten to do this the last two episodes. Welcome to Weather Wise Guys.
Oh yeah, Evan.
Hi, I'm Wes. Nice to meet you. Welcome back to Weather Wise Guys. Evan works in Birmingham. I work in Kansas City. There's a chance you're watching because of either one of us, I would say. But yeah, going back to the last episode, I had come across some research that said tornado-producing storms don't really make big hail. All the hail, I didn't have a report of hail at all yesterday. I think some of the tornado warnings, they weren't even putting a hail, like a little hail indicator on there at all. And part of the reason actually was because our air mass was very southeastern United States, very tropical. It was saturated up the entire way, and the freezing level was pretty high. So there just wasn't any hail. I did have to yesterday, Evan, kind of, I wouldn't say I had to eat crow. There was no mea culpa, but there was definitely yeah, I didn't think this was going to happen kind of a situation where I definitely said tornadoes are unlikely. There's a low chance for a tornado. I'm more worried about wind and flash flooding. No, it turns out there were two tornadoes in a pretty heavily populated part.
Have they been confirmed by? Did they go out and survey anything yet?
Yes. So they found an EF1 that was on the ground for 10 minutes, and then an EFU. You got an EFU.
You want to explain that?
Unknown. So that was the tornado that went through the parking lot and a tree-filled area out at Arrowhead Stadium, and it didn't do any damage. In fact, the picture that came with the tornado survey was like a 3-foot limb that had fallen, and that was their damage indicator. And there were some stuff blown over, but nothing was on their list of damage indicators to say how strong it was. And so they gave it an EFU. And they did get a video. I don't know if it was from the Chiefs or from the Royals or from somebody, but if you don't know how the Truman Sports Complex looks, is the stadiums are, essentially back to back, all in one giant area, but it went through on the Chiefs side of things. So the Chiefs may have sent them in some surveillance video of the tornado going across the parking lot.
Interesting. It almost sounds like a little whirlwind more so than, a tornado. That's I don't think I've ever heard of a scenario where it does that little damage. It has that little impact, and it gets that rating. That's interesting.
I think it was perfectly timed with a radar scan and just going through an area that has surveillance video. That's the only way they were really able to confirm this. And I did come across some information, and Evan and I were kind of going through the radar scans yesterday, saying like, okay, we see that it is a tornado based on like velocity. Like it was very obviously there for a minute. But then we're never able to find any debris. Well, whenever we're on air, we are not able to digest quite as much. Oh, nice. Wow, this is a sweet little setup you got here.
Yeah, I tried to like make it look like the phones, but these are the exact same time, and this is exactly what
Yeah.
Wes told me. He said go to 226. So I went to the archived stuff at 226, and you nailed it. This was by far the best scan, and I went back to two, and I went all the way to about 240. And this, if it was down, I would have guessed it was right here.
Yes. And so that is like essentially the road or the parking lot of where Arrowhead is. But what we couldn't see on air, and what you may be able to see on radar scope, is that if you go to like, there's different tilts of the radar. If you go up one extra tilt, if you go to like zero point 0.8 on the tilt elevation, there apparently is a debris signature in there that lines up very well with all the other radar products.
Interesting. Any idea how
And
high it was?
I don't know. I'm not sure. And so that was the tornado debris signature from the storm. And so, yeah, it's just kind of an interesting situation. I had to explain to probably 10 people today, like in person, in addition to doing it on air, like what a EF unknown is. You see those more often, like in the desert, in the plains, where it's like a grass field, and you're
Dust
like,
devil,
it's
whirlwind.
exactly. Yeah, like a land spout, like EF unknown.
That's such a weird categorization. To my knowledge, there's never been, in my time in Alabama, an EF unknown. Could
That's
be wrong.
because you guys have so many trees to hit. They can go and be like, all right, this tree was like destroyed in this way,
It's
in
like
this
the
manner.
Tasmanian devil ripping through here. Pine tree heaven. It's nuts. So,
That is more so what the second tornado did. Where you see Independence on your screen, kind of closer to the Dence, the DENCE. That is where the storm dropped another tornado, and it was an EF1, and there's a bunch of trees there, and so they were able to get a rating on it that ways.
I don't know. I did not. I failed to grab the picture that goes with this. I can get it if you want in a second. But there was a perfect view from Raytown. You guys see Raytown on your screen? And explain why, Wes, this is the perfect spot and angle to view, a tornado.
So, like, yeah, generally the southern side of a storm is the best way to see, and that's like especially true for supercells because you're getting in on what is like clear air or warm, moist air that's coming in into the storm. Raytown, if you were like near the W and the N of Raytown, so that'd be like the eastern side of town, you would have had a decent look of the tornado if it was there. But the thing is, that tornado is like embedded within the front of this line of rain and thunderstorms. So, yeah, like it's very possible that someone saw the tornado because, well, whenever the tornado went through the sports complex, that had to have, seen it then and saw it on video. But for the most part, I think many of the pictures that we saw yesterday were of the front of the line of thunderstorms, not necessarily the funnel itself. And something that I've come to realize is that people associate the entire storm with a tornado. So if you were to go to like an orthopedic surgeon and be like, "Doctor, my knee hurts," and the doctor's like, "It's not your knee, it's your ACL, or it's your blah 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 blah," right? Because the knee, there's so many intricate parts of your knee, and there's so many intricate parts of a storm where it's like, no, you're like not probably looking at the tornado, you're looking at the entire storm itself as it goes through. Oh
And
yeah, that's the video. That's the video I posted.
yeah,
And so I don't know.
that so of all the ones I've looked at, and I did not want to start a firestorm on social media because when people see a tornado, they see a tornado. It you can't talk them out of it, understandably so. That to me looks like a mesocyclone that's really, really low. But it doesn't look to me like they're at this point it's on the ground. Like it's very close. you got a wall cloud, and the whole base of that looks to be rotating, but it just, I don't know. It's really hard to tell. And I looked at several of the photos, and obviously there was a tornado with it. It was just tough to tell when it was down. But man, that was a heck of a view that you got.
If there was a tornado in there, it would be like immediately left of where like the lowering is. Yeah, it would be like like just off, just like right there, if not even like closer to the tree line. It would be right in there, because it's essentially a part of the line itself. You know, you can actually get these little tornadoes. They're not called tornadoes. They're called like, oh, they're gust nados. You can get gust nados that do develop on the front of the line. But these type of tornadoes are like, they're embedded within the line itself. And so like, yes, to some extent they're visible, but they're not like, hey, I'm in like 2 miles away and I can see this tornado. It's like, no, you're just like seeing the storm, not exactly the tornado itself. But then you get into the situation where it's like, I mean, it's just a layperson. They're just calling the entire storm the tornado. They're not trying to be like specific with it.
And we just sound pretentious because we know the terms, and so we're like, well, actually, that was this, so it wasn't actually.
Yeah.
No, and then you just sound like a jerk. I've had that conversation with people before, and when you go through something like this, I will say I've talked with people that have had bad straight line wind damage. They get really upset, at least here, when you tell them it wasn't a tornado. When the surveys come out and they say it was destructive straight line winds, it's like for some reason that's not the same level as tornado to them. What did their damage was had to have been a tornado. There was wind and everything else. So I actually ran into that a couple weeks ago. You know, I talked about the signature didn't look good, and I felt good that there was not a tornado, but there was damaging winds possible. Well, I had a guy call and ask for my job a couple days in a row, saying that
A couple days in a row.
it was like 2 or 3 days. He sent a couple emails, but basically saying that I downplayed something, and it did have damage. And you know, it was from winds, but to each their own. Like, you go through something, damage is damage. And to me, this is a rotating embedded supercell that's got a lowering in what looks like the mesocyclone. It's a great shot. We rarely get that. Was just like the Huntsville one that we were talking about last week.
It's like really tough to tell, but it's like, hey, like, you know, there is a tornado in there for sure. The Huntsville one was even more obvious because like that one was coming into town destroying stuff. This had not, which is why at first, whenever we were doing tornado coverage, it's like, all right, like there was definitely a tornado there. It is like 100% going through a wooded area. There are structures, and we're 30 minutes post tornado, and there's no one in the chat saying this stuff is damaged, this situation.
And that's rare, especially for a metropolitan area. I don't know if people realize that with phones today, we get reports like instantly. So for there not to be them when I was talking to you yesterday, that's shocking. And I was listening to your coverage. You were like, yeah, we're not hearing anything, but 2 semi trucks are tipped over.
Yeah, the funny thing is, so there's a semi truck on either side of the state line. It's like KCK. The Kansas side did not have a tornado in that part of town. Where the semi truck was tipped over on 435, we found the crash report, and it was not because of a tornado; it was because of another driver. But it's another thing where like the storm was going through, people immediately assume that the tornado caused the truck to flip over. But then when you look at like the trees on either side of the road, the trees are fine. So it's like that wasn't a tornado. The weather just sucks, and then there was an accident.
The weather sucks. People can't drive. Good combo. You see Raytown right there, Wes?
Yeah, Raytown.
That's the view you were talking about. Is right there. I mean, and I should have drawn out the distance there, but that's no more than a couple miles, if that.
Oh, it's close. Oh no, absolutely. Like the stadium is in Raytown, like technically. So
Okay.
it's in the same town. It's like on the fringes of Raytown, but you're in the same town.
So, just for people who don't know the area as well, that's me included, what would have happened if something like this had materialized and gone through Independence? What's an Independence?
Independence is the third. Independence is the third largest city in the state of Missouri. Yeah, I've been really bad. And one did go through Independence. It's like we had this brief one that happened out at the sports complex, and then lifted before it had a chance to go over the interstate there, or rather both interstates there. And then once it progressed toward like the DENCE, the dense part of Independence, it dropped about a 4 mile long tornado through some neighborhoods. So it like avoided probably 75% of Independence through that area. And I actually have been meaning to go back and watch coverage last night, other than a little bit that I did with my boss earlier today. But I'd like to go back and see, like, hey, when a tornado actually occurred, was I taking it as seriously as I should have? Like, because
So,
sometimes you'll look at radar data and, the moment you're like, this is not that bad. Like I don't need to be, match the tone here. And so I like to make sure that my tone is matching reality of stuff getting destroyed or not.
that was one of the takeaways as I was listening. I thought, okay, you were unsure at times, which makes sense. This was a very convoluted system. QLCS or embedded tornadoes are very hard. So you were telling people, and sometimes it's kind of an out of body experience. And you know you're saying the right stuff, but you don't remember specifically what. And you
Oh,
said
yeah.
you need to get to your safe place. You need to get to your safe place. We're not sure. Get to your safe place. You kept saying that, and then in addition to that, you were still able to tell people, the legacy warning systems, the sirens, they'll go off for the whole county, and that'll freak people out. You were able to tell people, hey, if you're hearing the sirens but you're here, you're clear. So also, while telling people to take this seriously, you're also giving other people that like peace of mind, like, hey, you're hearing this, but you're good, you're clear. And you didn't miss a beat in all of that. And to me, you took it seriously, but you probably the most impressive part is like you didn't panic, you didn't sound like anxious, you didn't sound like you know concerned in a sense that would make the viewer concerned. You were just doing your job, and I was very impressed, and that's why I shared what I did. I said, "This is my guy, Wes, killing it." So it's hard to do, folks. Communicating, getting in info, and doing it in a way. If you have a chance to go back and watch it, I'm sure it's on YouTube, but it was good stuff. It's how coverage I think should be.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. I wish I would have heaped as much praise on you during your coverage of the tornado outbreak in Alabama as you have heaped on me. So it means a lot, especially since your boss is like a tornado coverage idol. I think you know what the good stuff looks like. So that's really good. And so yeah, at this point, the storm was not dropping a tornado, but it did like 5 minutes later. And then after that, it kind of fizzled out. So there ended up being two tornadoes from this. Out of the 2.5 hours worth of tornado coverage, two tornadoes, tree damage, stuff like that,
No injuries.
and no injuries. And I remember a previous episode, Evan, you broke down like the accuracy of tornado warnings by a weather forecast office. And mine, the predominant one in my area, is about 33, 34%. And they probably hit that. Because the hour of previous tornado warnings didn't come. Oh, wow. What are the odds you had that?
Dude, this was literally in there from a previous show, and I just I didn't delete it because I actually wasn't sure where I had this graph saved. But this is a look at verification, and for those of you at home, 34% might not be that's really good for tornado verification, because you have to warn storms that could potentially have a warning. So your two offices, Wes, are essentially tied and just ahead of Birmingham over the same period.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I like that. I'm glad we're both working with quite competent meteorologists, because I will tell you, there was some doubt amongst other meteorologists in town that there was indeed a tornado, and I understand that doubt because they could not find the debris signature on their radar. The reports for damage were not coming in. I get it, but like at the same time, these aren't like idiots running the radar. They don't like the decisions that were being made for that day, like are pretty strong decisions, and so to some extent you have to give them the benefit of the doubt until it's proven otherwise. Because, Evan, from our perspective, we're at a green screen. We're looking at stuff with half the amount of time to analyze it as what these meteorologists are doing, and so it's like you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. And if they would have found nothing today, then you can say, what the heck? Like, why did that happen? Let's assess the situation. But yeah,
Yeah.
they got it.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I have a huge. It is so much easier to go into an event knowing who you have at your back in the National Weather Service office, because you know that they're great. I've met a lot of the ones in Birmingham, and they're awesome. They're just good people. They're good at their jobs. And you mentioned the radar tilt going up zero point 0.8 degrees. Well, that's what they can do while they're sitting there. They can look at every aspect of the storm and probably analyze it better than you and I can without, trying to explain to thousands and thousands of people, where it's headed and what's going on. So it's a team effort all around, and kudos to your office. And the most important stat, no injuries. So,
Yeah.
that's a win for the weather department. Oh,
And
wait.
when we got this tornado, Evan, I mean, this is a pretty standard time for us to get tornadoes in terms of time of the year. May, June, that's pretty good for us. I would say. What do we? Let me see.
So the ones I circled right there,
Yeah.
that is essentially Tornado Alley from 2000 to 2024. So the numbers are skewed and displaced by almost exactly a month as far as like the peak. So whereas we peak, all those lines down there, that is
Mm-hmm.
that's Dixie Alley. And it wasn't until I plotted it that I realized, okay, the overall maximum for much of Tornado Alley, the classic version anyway, is not until mid to late May. Had no idea. And it makes sense. We've talked about it, but the fact that y'all's numbers spike so much is just it's a interesting view of how our seasonal shift begins. We are now completely in a tropical air mass. The fronts don't make it to us anymore. They still make it to you. So there's still that dynamic support. There's still the wind shear. There's still that clash in air masses. We don't have it by this time of the year, which is why we don't ever have outbreaks. The latest outbreak ever in Birmingham, which I'll get to in just a minute, was in late May. We've never had a tornado outbreak in June, which is very interesting. So I grabbed here's some on Kansas. This isn't specific to your market or anything. The Missouri numbers were a
Close
bit
enough.
yeah, the Missouri numbers were a bit more convoluted, but if you just look at the bottom and the dates, look at the spike at 521 and 6-4. Um,
6-4.
yep,
That's it's perfect.
yep, today. So it's interesting that you see the displacement versus like our top tornado days are, I think, like right around April 11th or maybe a little bit earlier. We've been trending earlier the last about decade or so. Um, but it just y'all have had several outbreaks in late June. I was getting so deep in the weeds. In 1970, I believe. Hold on, I think I took notes on this. In 1970, there was like a 6-day outbreak that included almost the entire middle of the country. And it went from like June 10th to 16th. And it was, I believe, in the early 70s. I think it was 1970. But you guys had multiple days of outbreaks. The stalled jet stream just created tornado after tornado. I think Kansas had somewhere around like 11 tornadoes. Strongest one like an EF2 or an F2 at the time. It was just nuts to read that these events have happened where you guys are in mid to late June. We just don't have that down here.
That like multi-day outbreak stalled front situation sounds like what happened was it March? Like March or early April in like Arkansas and
Arkansas.
Tennessee.
Yeah,
Just
so
like,
Missouri and Kansas, June 10th through 16th of 1970, there were tornadoes recorded every single day for 6 days across that region. Um, yeah, and it finally the pattern shifted and all the tornadoes went up into Michigan. But yeah, that's. I also found out this is interesting, and then we can move on. But Mississippi and Georgia both had their latest tornado outbreak all time in 2023. It happened June 27th. Well, why didn't Alabama have it? It hit Mississippi middle of the afternoon, died over Alabama at night, reignited over Georgia, and they had an outbreak. June 27th, thereabout, I think it was the 27th, 28th of 2023. So before then, I don't think it had ever happened past like June 10th, and that might even be a stretch. But anyway, just random nonsense.
another random piece of nonsense is that St. Louis, for 3 months in a row, has had a confirmed tornado go through the city. It happened again today.
No way.
Yes.
Have you ever heard people say that tornadoes can't go through metropolitan areas?
Yes. Someone asked me about Chicago like a month ago.
It's a myth. They absolutely can. They just don't typically do. In 2009, the roof was part of the roof was taken off of the Georgia Dome. I don't know if you remember this one, Wes,
Oh
during the
yeah.
SEC basketball tournament. An EF1 or EF0, 90-mile-an-hour winds in downtown Atlanta. One of the weirdest things to see, but it happens.
In 2019, 2019 or 2018, I was doing tornado coverage in Atlanta with like Weather Channel legend like Samantha Moore. And we had just gotten off air from doing some storm coverage. And then all of a sudden, a tornado develops, like a confirmed tornado develops in College Park, which is the heart of Atlanta. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
and this is like my fourth year, like having a job professionally. And I'm just like, my gosh, I have never seen a tornado develop in the center of a city, just like out of like this is like crazy, like a multi-million person metropolitan area just pops up right in the middle.
That would be it's the unexpected ones that get me all off kilter. And I've been much better about it in recent years about not ever closing the door completely. Yes, there are certain scenarios where there's just no chance we don't have the dynamic support, but it's really hard to say never. So to kind of close the book on this, Wes, what would you say was the biggest thing from a forecasting standpoint that might have been overlooked or had evolved? Did this outperform? Was there a factor that was missed? Do you think, or was it fair to say that you kind of were expecting this and this was just a kind of the higher end of what happened that day?
You know, I still need to go back and like reassess what all that I missed. There are a couple things that like stick out in my head of like decisions that I made to not say things leading up to it. Though the biggest one was around 11 o'clock on Monday. I was about to draw out a map and I was like, hey, this is the best chance for a severe threat. And it was like the top area was essentially where those tornadoes moved through. And it was where the rain had stopped and we're starting to get some destabilization from the atmosphere. So it's going to be like one large bubble area. And then I looked at the SPC outlook and it was further south. And I was like, yeah, that makes more sense. Like maybe there's rain cooled air and like the severe threat's now south. And so I posted something that like the threat for severe weather has been pushed south, likely south of the Kansas City metro. And I was just like, that was it. Like I saw it. Like I saw it right there. Like it could happen. I saw it. And then I was looking at some some supercell composites parameters, some significant tornado parameters, and I was like, this is really randomly putting over high values right in the center of the metro. And you're like, that seems very unlikely. It's very odd. And so I just like wrote it off. And I'm like that was it. Like I saw two things that told me that there could have been a tornado in the middle of the city, and
But you did probably what a lot of people would do. I tend to throw out the outlier. I look at the several runs during the morning show because I get all the runs of the her, especially, those are the high resolution short term models. And if I see one that's showing garbage data where there's all of a sudden a maximized value, I tend to disregard it. Not in the sense that it's total garbage, but if I'm seeing 6 runs and it's a little different, it's hard to be sold on the one that has a much more negative outlook.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And especially if maybe that forecast is not in line with what the overall group think of the situation is. That like reinforces the like, all right, this is probably not going to happen because we went from I don't know the time difference from when a tornado watch was issued to a tornado warning. It was probably 15 minutes or less.
It was so quick because when I looked initially, Wes, you guys had a severe thunderstorm watch, and I thought this is odd. They've got tornado stuff coming through, and honestly, I thought the severe thunderstorm watch was in place when the tornado warnings first started. I could be wrong on that, but I remember looking and I was like, they got a severe thunderstorm watch, not even a tornado watch. Which, if there's any chance of tornadoes at all, usually the SPC just goes ahead and does tornado watch to cover all grounds. But
Oh,
I don't.
we weren't even in that severe thunderstorm watch was south of our area.
I think that points to an oversight by not just you, but the whole system. And one of the cool things about this business is you can go back and learn what was different, what initiated, what was the ingredient that ended up coming together that wasn't. I learned probably the more when I screw up, I learn more than any other part of this job because it sticks with you and you want to be right.
Yeah, I'm going through our data feed 927. Where's flight risk 1140, flood advisory, mesoscale discussion at 1, tornado watch at 139, tornado warning. Oh, Jesus. Tornado watch at 139, tornado warning at 146. There's a 7-minute difference between the watch and the warning.
Wow, that's an interesting stat. That
And at
doesn't
that
happen.
point, we're all I'm like calling production. It's like 1:15. I'm calling production. I'm like, you need to be ready to go on any point. I'm like calling managers. I'm like, we need to get our stuff together right now because this is going to happen very, very soon. All right, enough about me.
All right. Seriously though, good stuff. Well done. This business, and I said it in the post. We're here to serve people. I got into
Right.
this, literally got into this business because I looked up to the guy on TV who told
Yeah.
me where to go, and it was Weather Channel for me as a kid. He told me it's going to be okay, what to do. We'll get through it together, and that's our goal, and to do it in a way that reaches everybody in a calm sense while also being informative. It's public service, and you nailed it, sir. So, all right,
Well,
that's the last compliment you get today.
thank you.
Okay, so last week we left off talking about hurricanes, right?
We were talking about it. Let's get a little fiery.
Okay, so we're gonna go back with this here. Just to recap, this is the 2025 Atlantic hurricane season outlook. Okay, the numbers are not the only thing definitive is we're probably not having a below normal year according to this group.
Yes,
Everything else is like, eh. Did you do a hurricane forecast, Wes?
I did. I actually did it like an hour ago. I was going to work on this previously, but I kept running into other things that I had to do that I just got it done.
That's all good. I have like serious sleeping issues, so I woke up at about 4 o'clock this morning and I just started looking at some of the stuff. And a lot of this, I have to say, so I'll go ahead and show you what I have.
Okay.
So this is mine. Um, so
Oh, well, I got the pie chart. You did spend time on this.
oh yeah, Wes. By now you got to know me. I love my graphics and I love my charts and I love me some Excel. So this was just, I thought about this and I'm thinking, okay, I could overthink it with data or I can just kind of go with a gut feeling. I kind of did both. So 5 to 9 hurricanes, 2 to 4 major, 14 to 18. I skewed high on the named storms because I think we know more and we have more data that we have more named storms. I don't necessarily think that'll translate into more hurricanes or major hurricanes, but I do think we'll have a lot of what I call junk systems that are depressions, weak tropical storms, disorganized systems that are maybe in the middle of the Atlantic. 2024 had plenty of that. I did a whole recap of the season, and there were about 7 storms out in the middle of the Atlantic, didn't touch land. The only one I think was Kirk, got to a major hurricane, but it didn't impact anybody. So there's the National Hurricane Center. And I just went a little bit less on the hurricanes, a little less on the major. And here is my report, Wes. This is my my book report. So
I love this.
To me, the forecast that the NHC put out and that I did, it just makes sense. We're in a neutral phase. You don't have to fully understand the ENSO, that's El Nino, Southern Oscillation. That is a measure of, are we in a La Nina or an El Nino? In a El Nino, ingredients are not great for hurricanes. You have cooler sea surface temperatures, you have air sinking aloft, and typically a lot of wind shear. In a La Nina, it's opposite. You've got a really good setup. You have warmer sea surface temperatures and typically a good predominant wind profile and rising air versus sinking air. So there's a lot more complex. We do a whole episode on ENSO, but I thought this was interesting. Neutral season since 2000, 2005, 2019, 2023. All of those were above average. And 2005, we don't even have to, go into. That was record-breaking year. I think 28 storms. That was Katrina. That was Rita. Historic year. And that was a neutral season. So going off of this, I skewed a little bit above average, but I didn't really do anything too aggressive because there are so many freaking variables. How are you going to... Okay. Well, how do you know where all this stuff's going to set up? There's the tropical waves. Those are the little, low pressure systems that come flying off the African coastline, right where the Sahara meets that really, really rainforest, tropical laden area. And I forget what countries are over there, but it's rainforest to desert. You get these waves that roll off.
Yeah.
How many they're going to be? Once they come offshore, there's a sea surface temperature cooling right off the coast of Africa. There's an anomaly that has waters cool. Will that affect it? There's just so many variables. I just find a hard time putting a whole lot of stock in this until the season gets going.
Okay, this is very in depth. Thank you very much for presenting that.
Well, okay, this is what happens when you have, what is it called? Is it narcolepsy? What is the one where you can't sleep?
Narcolepsy is when you fall asleep, I think.
Oh,
Insomnia is when you cannot fall asleep.
Here you go. I work mornings, then I go to evenings. Next week I'm back to mornings. My body doesn't know what to do. So,
yeah, I don't blame you. That sounds terrible. Is my camera been crooked this entire time?
It looked fine to me. I didn't notice, but so that's my report. Do you have anything you want to share, or?
I do. Do you want me to share my screen so I can show you mine?
Yeah, let me take mine down.
Okay.
Wow. Who won the award for more visually appealing report?
Oh, you for sure. You for sure. Here's what I'm thinking.
Man, you went much lower than I did.
I did go much lower than you. 11 to 14 name storms. I have no idea how this compares to average. I need to look up the average real quick.
Average is, I think, 18 named storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major, I believe is it's right about there. I'm taking a picture of this because we're going to revisit this in November, December when the season's over, and that'll be the ultimate forecast competition.
I was thinking, since you did all the work with your graphics, I'll develop the classic chart that has the average, the NHC forecast, and then our forecast and stuff like that as well.
Okay, that's mighty nice of you.
Thank you. Okay, so 11 to 14 name storms. Yes, the 13-year average is 11 to 14. So I'm still playing with we still could hit that average. Hurricanes, I'm thinking 4 to 8. 7. I'm definitely leaving the window open, leaving the door open here for lower than average and 3 major hurricanes, which is the major average. And so it's like, yes, we'll get some storms and maybe, things coming up the right. And we do have like the major hurricanes, which are category 3, or greater, of course. But yeah, something, I use this little forecasting technique that a couple of my colleagues, some of my former colleagues, has found success with. And he doesn't share the entire recipe with me. I just know like a couple of ingredients. And so I'm like filling in the rest of the pie with some other random ingredients. And I actually don't even know what their forecast is. I just generally have an idea of what their forecasting technique is in general. So that's why I'm leaning more toward lower storms. And if they come out, if their entity comes out with a high forecast, then I'm just going to be sitting here hoping that magically we have a quiet hurricane season overall.
So what popped in my head while I was doing this that was frustrating, and I think just tells the narrative. I could make an argument both ways. The whole time I'm thinking I could argue both sides of this, and that just goes to show that I don't have anything definitive. There's things as the ACE index. That's a metric that shows the amount of energy available within the realm that is the Atlantic Basin. A higher ACE index could indicate there's more energy for hurricanes, but there's all these other variables. So in several instances, I could say, sure, I could see above average. Our sea surface temperature anomalies as of this morning, like the buoy data, was between about 1 and 2 degrees Celsius, so like 3 or so degrees Fahrenheit, 3.64. Above in much of the Caribbean and Gulf, right around average for much of the Atlantic. I mean, there's not a huge difference. And then you got, there's just a lot of variables. A lot of variables.
There is.
If you do, here's the last point I was going to make. Go back and look at the forecast numbers for the past, I think you can find it back to 2000. Some of them, the older ones, are harder to find. They're all pretty similar, unless there's a pronounced year where there's a significant La Nina or significant El Nino. The numbers are pretty. They're not the most definitive. I don't want to knock this forecasting at all, because you have some excellent meteorologists there, but it's just hard for me to put a ton of stock in an NHC forecast. Here's what we can expect over the next 8 months. Here's a broad look. These storms may or may not be in a waterway near you, and may or may not be major.
But it only takes one, Evan.
You're right. And that's
it only takes one. It's a cool little graphic. See if I can share this one real quick. Share. So this has.
What is this?
And it looks like it has all the activity from the last few years.
Oh, okay. Wow, I like that.
Okay, this is Barcelona Supercomputing Center. All right, so
right up my alley. I like this.
There's a bunch. This has all the hurricane forecasts put together. Maxar, Ensmet, Weather Tiger. So this is part of the reason why I thought that Evan and I need to do our own forecast. Is because 268WX, CWG, Capital Weather Gang, Earth Network, some of these are legitimate entities. And I don't know if this would be we're going Mel Kiper of is Mel Kiper's draft board. I don't even know if Mel Kiper's that great. That's the thing. But the point is, anybody can do this. In fact, average person is one of those. So at this point, forecasting hurricane season has become a March Madness draft type of thing.
It's vanilla. It's a person making maybe a bold move. I stand by it. I think Phil Klotzbach might be the smartest, best resource when it comes to tropical. When that man says something, he might be the Mel Kiper, because he notices these things. He's been studying hurricanes he studied hurricanes that predate him. He's gone back and looked at all the atmospheric charts and everything that was in play. And that is the biggest part of forecasting is considering how does this setup line up to previous events? Was there a year that had very similar parameters? And maybe going off of something like that. But, maybe he skews one way and everyone's like, oh, yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
So their forecast, which I don't know why it says March through April.
So when I was looking this up, it looked like they do more than one forecast a year, all these entities, or at least some of them. So they have their either March or April, sometime in that time frame, they release theirs. It varies.
Oh.
Another forecast that they will release usually in August is an update based off of what's happened. So that's how I understood it, but
Okay.
I could be
That
wrong
makes
on that.
sense.
But
Well, okay, so Klotzbach is predicting slightly above average, average to
yeah,
above average.
Colorado State.
But then Noah, I guess, yeah, they're slightly above average there. That makes sense. They're 60% for above average. So just looking at this, I mean, some of these ranges are so gigantic that, like,
I know. Like I look at that one, and then there's the UKMO. I just
15 to 13.
13. There's an 8. I mean, it'd be hard almost to miss being in that window.
Because, yeah, because their forecast has low and high, but they're leaning toward high.
Okay. Well, guess what, Wes? I think tomorrow will be between 80 and 90. I'm leaning towards 90, but it could be 80. So I'm right.
Yes, I'm trying to think who else. I don't. There's no average person forecast in there. Maybe we need to send our forecast to the Barcelona, to the seasonal prediction BSCES, and see what we get.
I'm down for it. You know who's good, and we could potentially bring him back. David Paul. He was my chief in Dothan. He is excellent when it comes to tropical. That's like his. I want to say specialty because he's really good at the snow forecasting. But he taught me a lot about hurricanes and tropical systems. And I remember when, we had coverage for Matthew when it made landfall in 2018. And, there were certain things he picked up and was able to see. It's not all about model data. There's certain things you have to be able to look at and understand. And he's pretty good at that. So if that's something we want to do, we could probably reach out to him. I'm sure he'd love to. He's a huge Klotzbach fan. Huge, huge.
Yeah, and then I don't know if Nordstrom is still open to coming on. Maybe eventually, and Greg can come.
Me, I'm gonna start blowing up his phone.
Yeah, love to have someone that's much smarter than both of us. I would like that.
I think my specialty for sure is severe weather. I feel very confident in being able to identify features on radar, track them. That's my comfort zone. That's because that's all that I've done. Where I feel out of my element is snow, as we talked about earlier in the year when we did snow forecasting. It's just not something I do frequently. I don't have repetitions with it, and it's tough. And I'd put tropical somewhere in between. I think I'm decent. I'm certainly not great, and I do not pick out certain things before some of the greater Mets in this. I try to watch it, try to learn, but I'm not at that tier, and it's something of course we can work on.
Well, some people are just older than you, Evan. Some people have just seen more hurricanes than you. There's nothing you can do about that, fortunately.
Right. I've seen everyone since 1992, so maybe I have to accrue some more years.
It's nice. I think we will probably get a break from the severe weather here locally, and so, for next week's topic, I'll actually be at the beach for next week's topic. I'll hop on and do an episode. You may have to actually run it from your computer next week.
If we want actual graphics versus, a notepad typing thing, then yes, I should do it.
That's my specialty. I whenever I have to do stuff, I open up a notepad. I mean, you probably saw how many tabs I've opened. I have like 10 tabs open.
Dude, my we use OneNote. I have about 30 different projects in there. I have our Tornado Alley, Dixie Alley stuff. I have all the verification because I start by just jotting stuff in there and then I drop it into Excel. But like my OneNote is just full of stuff, and I'm right there with you. But I take it and then I make it look nice in a graphic. So
we haven't done this. I didn't do it last episode or the previous episode, but I do want to say that Evan was correct with his Chicago forecast from like a month and a half ago.
No way. What's the score? Is it 9-5?
I'm not sure what the score was. I was probably off by like 4 degrees, 4 or 5 degrees. So we can get that back going, get that going again soon.
Okay, you want to wait till after you get back from the beach? That way it'll be maybe a
Yeah.
smoother transition.
I don't exactly remember what my forecast was and what yours was, but I do remember looking it up and I was like, wow, I'm not even close. That haven't beat me. So we can just choose a new city and do that.
We will call this retribution. You know why, Wes? Because Chicago, United Airlines, they left me in the terminal and caused me to miss a day of work because they decided to close the doors 7 minutes early. And I got to the airport 4 hours in advance. It was the line at TSA. I got there at 5 o'clock for a 9 o'clock flight, and I missed it. And they were like, "Oh, sorry. Here's a drink voucher."
For hours. What?
I'm not. I wasn't familiar with O'Hare, so I was like, "I'm gonna get there early." My flight was for I was supposed to land in Birmingham at like 11. I ended up getting back at like 10 o'clock that night on like a red eye. It actually was later. It took off at like 10 o'clock. I didn't get back till like 1 a.m. It was nuts, but they left me there.
Can't believe it. 7 minutes. That's ridiculous.
I may have stopped and got McDonald's. That's probably what did me in.
All right. Well, it's good seeing you, buddy.
Yeah,
Next week, we'll see you from the beach.
good thing. Well done again. Watch it back, and I'd be curious what you don't have to share this on Wise Guys, but curious what your thoughts are because I'd never like watching myself back. I'm like, God, I missed this, this, and this, but from my perspective, it seemed pretty good. So
Thanks, buddy.
good.
Appreciate it. And hopefully, over the next 2 weeks, none of us have any of the other game film to be presenting on this.
We are the wise guys of weather, sort of. We need to build a graphic that has all of our social media so people can actually follow us, send us pictures, and they could be featured on the show.
Yeah.
Would love to see the photos that you're seeing and have you part of it. So thanks for being a part of it.
Yeah. And by the way, if you're watching us on YouTube, we're on Spotify. If you're listening to us on Spotify, we're also on YouTube.
Yeah, and if you're listening on Spotify and you want to see what we look like, you can, or you can leave it to imagination. Totally up to you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right, see you guys.